Elton, do we have the flag? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Verona Board of Education, February 22nd, 2022 meeting. We're calling the meeting to order, and it is 7:09. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The reading of the meeting notice. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the open meeting session that the Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 4th, 2022. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Township of Verona, and the VEA. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has the right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public and the press. Mr. Cruz, can you please do a roll call for attendance?
Sure. Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Day. So the record, Mr. Day is absent today. Mrs. Drappi,
Here.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Here.
Mrs. Fresky.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And we're going to start off with Dr. Fernari and the superintendent's report.
Good evening. I just have a couple of items because I know we have some presentations this evening. First, we received word that the New Jersey Department of Health guidance related to COVID-19 protocols is supposed to be released tomorrow, February 23rd. Additional clarification of this new guidance is supposed to then be released on Friday, February 24th. This means that New Jersey school districts will have just about a week to plan for the lifting of the mask mandate. At this point, we do not know what other procedures or protocols will be affected, but rest assured that we will share the new plan as soon as possible after its completion. As a reminder, the Verona Public Schools will implement a mask optional approach beginning on March 7th, 2022. The only other item I have for you this evening, I'd like to thank Mr. Cruz and the entire administrative team for their efforts in crafting the preliminary budget that will be presented to you this evening. As in any fiscal year, a balance must be struck between fiscal responsibility and ensuring our students are provided with the exceptional educational experiences and services they need and deserve. In anticipation of the governor's state budget address, estimates with regard to state aid are included in the preliminary budget. It is our hope that no major revision to this preliminary budget will become necessary once state aid figures are released. You will note that the budget calendar is also on tonight's agenda due to the change in date of the governor's budget address. Board members, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Dr. Fenori. Does anybody have any questions? If not, then we are going to go over to Mr. Cruz, the business administrator, with the preliminary budget report.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen to present preliminary budget presentation. Yes, let me bring it a little closer. Yeah. So I'm not sure if everyone's able to see the screen. Okay. So good evening, everyone. This is the preliminary budget for our 22-23 fiscal year. Just want to start off by going through the budget timeline. And in today's addendum resolution, there is a revision to the budget calendar. Just to piggyback with what Dr. Fenari shared with us, since the governor's address has been delayed by 2 weeks, it is delaying a little bit of the timeline of this budget calendar. So right now we're actually in the phase of meeting with the board finance committee, and the next couple of weeks, the next 2 months, we'll be meeting a little more regularly just to go over that. And one of the things is that we are going to be waiting for that March 8th announcement from the governor on the state aid figures, and then we'll have that detail on March 10th. So the first thing I actually always like to do is actually start off with our mission, and a lot of you already know the Verona mission statement, and it actually reads: in partnership with supportive community, we inspire our students to be creative, critical thinkers, and compassionate global citizens through dynamic teaching and meaningful curricula and enriching experiences. So that being said, that's the foundation of what this budget is going to support, and that's what it would always support. And it's really the breathing piece of our mission. So our budgetary goals for this budget, the first piece is actually to maintain class sizes within our policy guidelines. A big piece for us is really to expand and continue expanding additional programming for our students. And that will entitle staffing adjustments to support program enhancements in general and special education, along with the arts and athletics. Also expanding the continuing expansion of our social emotional learning, and increasing our substitutes and lunch aids. As we all aware, that's actually always been an area, and we're continuing actually seeing that growth in our lunch aid coverage as well. Lastly, is staying within the 2% cap plus the bank cap that we have available. So those figures, the 2% increase in our tax levy, the calculation of that is that's 712,683. The back cap that's available to us is 294,555. And the estimated increase in state aid, we don't have those figures until that March 8th announcement, and then the actual details of those figures will be released to us on the 10th of March. So currently, the total estimate increase in revenue, it equates to 1,707,238. As we've reported in last month's audit, we do have an excess surplus that's being brought into our fund balance, and that surplus is 912,938. So the total is 1.92176. Currently, the projected expenditures for 22-23, most of that is in salaries, so 1.7 in salaries. Benefits is 344,000. Special ed increase is 270,000. Our curriculum and instruction academics, 41,000. The great thing, I just want to actually highlight that Dr. Fenari and myself, we're big believers on ensuring that resources are being directed directly to students. So here you see a reduction in central office of 60,000 and an increase to schools discretionary funding of 62,000. IT is increasing by 31,000. Athletics, an increase of 12,000. Buildings and grounds. Because of our ESSER funding, we were able to shave off because ESSER is being able to cover that. 51,000 is being shaved off this year. And all other areas is an actual increase of 179,000. So currently, these are just preliminary figures, and we won't have the finalized number until we get closer in the budgeting process. So currently, the projected over cap amount is this difference between what our estimated revenue increase is and versus the estimated total expenditures. So we're over capped by 649,000, almost 650. Close to 80%, exactly 78.5% of our budget is going towards salaries and benefits. And this slide, I just have some variables of the budget for next year. Is one of the variables that we continue doing is leveraging financing for technology purchases, reducing out of district special ed placements, staffing retirements and resignations, increase in, hopefully there will be an increase in our state aid for 22-23. And additional will be to continue to streamline efficiencies in our budgeting process. And the last piece is our next steps. So where do we go from here? So the next step, as I mentioned earlier, is that March 10th announcement. Hopefully we get good news from the governor in that release. And it's an increase to our state aid figures. The step after that is we'll have an update on the board March 22nd board meeting. And then it'll be, once it's actually approved by the board, that tentative budget gets submitted to our county superintendent for approval by that March 28th deadline. Lastly, we'll have our final board meeting for adopting the budget on April 26th. And that's what I have for our presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Walker?
Yeah, the only question I have is projected to get the ESSER 3. Does this money account for that projection?
Yeah, so the ESSER 3 funds that are going to be delayed until later on. So yeah, so right now, this is not including those ESSER figures.
So there's a big chunk also that was going to come to us. So that's great. Thank you.
Yes, correct.
I have a question regarding state aid. I don't know how long ago it was. I know the governor had, sort of projected a realignment of state aid. And I think it was like over a course of like 7 years. And I know when that first went out, certain districts made a windfall and other districts lost a tremendous amount of money. I guess I'm having trouble understanding how could our state aid then be less than it was the year prior? Can you explain that to me?
So currently our state aid figures have actually increased in the last few years. And the last check in that I had with the county BA, he did say to project a flat increase. He doesn't believe we're going to receive a reduction. So that was actually good to hear, but it's not a definite until we see it, until we actually see the release from the state. But we're hoping that it is an increase. We don't know how much of the increase it is. But we've seen districts where they actually have gone down. But the great thing for Verona is that we have in the last few years, we've been on a steady increase with our state aid.
My understanding too is it's a formula, right? So like
Yes.
the most important thing you might fill out all years, those forms you fill the first day of school when you report your income and the lunch forms. That's where most schools get that data from. So filling that out is super duper important for everybody in our district.
Yeah, agree.
Any other questions in regard? No? All right, Mr. Cruz, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we're going to move on. We have a second presentation this evening, and it is in regards to diversity, equity, inclusion, and that would be Grand River Solutions. So I'm going to give that over to Mr. Miller.
Okay, so I think Grand River, you are ready to go. I just sent a text message, so give me a thumbs up.
Hello, my name is Jody Shipper. I'm the Managing Director of Grand River Solutions, and I'm here with some members of our team to talk about our proposal in response to the request for proposals from the school district. When we started Grand River Solutions, I started it with an eye, together with my co-managing director, of creating an organization that could demystify the work of equity within school campuses and school communities, and could increase transparency in the work by making sure that we always listen before we leap, that we listen to the school's voices, to the voices of the community, so that we are respectful of every school's unique culture, resources, mission, and all the richness of their community before we start making any suggestions about any of the work that's to be done. When we approach work, we always keep our vision in mind, which is that we exist to help create safe and equitable work and educational environments. We always believe in working with every community, in looking for innovative ways to approach the work, making sure that we are held accountable by adhering to our timelines and our commitments of the work that we will do. We seek transformation, and sometimes that is small and sometimes that is large, depending on the scope of the project, and always, no matter what, to do our work with integrity. Elizabeth, if you could go to the next slide. We, as I said before, we always want to work with our clients. We never want to presume that we hold all of the answers and that we are going to tell somebody what to do. We want to make sure that we are always in keeping in mind that the work we do does vary from community to community based on their needs. We always want to make sure that we are helping to move any community forward toward the goals that they have identified, not the goals that we identify for them. At the end of the day, equity is at the heart of all that we do. Before I turn this over to my colleague Tibisay Hernandez, I also want to mention that my wonderful colleague Roma Shaw is on the call. Roma is invaluable at helping us to gather data, to keep track of data. We'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by gathering data, but taking a really holistic approach at how to learn about the community, the work that it perhaps has already done, and what its needs are. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows that Roma is also an integral part of this team. And now I will turn this over to my colleague Tibisay.
Thank you so much, Jody. I wanted to start off by giving a little bit of background on our approach. And we call our approach the reef framework. So reefs are great visuals for diversity because they're ecosystems that evolve in nature. And they represent resources, right? So the diversity creates more resources, not less, in these systems. So because of that, when we were developing our framework, we were thinking about how interconnected we are as human beings and how we can rely on each other to positively impact how we traverse through the world and how we educate, especially how we educate our children. So in thinking of that, the REEF framework came together, and it stands for Responsive Equity Evolution Framework. Our reframework is also built upon the 5 principles of social justice, which are access to resources, equity, participation, diversity, and human rights. So we identified that 3 common tenets are the foundation for enacting these principles, which are centering people, exploring perspectives, and creating processes that do not cause intended or unintended harm. Our approach promotes a call in instead of a call out approach to solution building. So in having that be the framework, we want to talk about the district's identified goals. So we saw that some of the goals are to conduct a culture and climate assessment, to review hiring, recruiting, and retention practices, analyze collected data and provide recommendations, and present findings to the school district stakeholders. So the way that we can accomplish these goals is by conducting a culture and climate assessment that utilizes the data collection approaches that are listed on the screen. By utilizing these strategies, we can explore what has already been done and where we can be intentional at helping to find solutions that are sustainable. It also allows us to collect data from multiple perspectives, students, parents, faculty, and administration, which captures a more holistic understanding of the district and can lead to customized recommendations. So this is just an overview of our detailed action steps that we would like to take from project launch, to data collection, to our data reporting strategies. Some final thoughts are that equity must be driven by human connection. It is not a zero-sum game, and equity should be embedded in perspectives, policies, as well as procedures. And equity is achievable through holistic and evidence-based approaches, which we know that we will be able to bring to the school district. So that's a little bit about us. Jody, if you have any additional comments?
I have one other comment I just wanted to make, and Tibisai, perhaps you could actually speak to this. I'll punt it to you. About some of how we work, I know sometimes we get a question about whether it is our goal to shame people or to try and convince people that they need to see things our way. And perhaps, Tibisai, you could talk a little bit about our approach when it comes to why we don't do that.
Absolutely. So we don't believe in the blame, shame, guilt game. That's not our approach to this work, because we believe that that shuts down people's vulnerability to want to have these conversations in meaningful ways and actually explore some of those unexplored areas that allow us to find innovative solutions to some of these complex issues. So in order to be able to find these solutions, we have to create safe and curious spaces where folks can ask questions and feel comfortable asking questions, and also a place where people can answer those questions in authentic ways and where we can build respectful conversations that allow for everybody's points of view to be shared, no matter how different those points of views are, but that we can take a critical look at some of the kernels of truth that might exist in those varied perspectives.
Thank you. And at this point, if we have any questions, we are happy to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Charlie, were you saying something? I'm sorry, Dr. Miller. Did you ask something? I'm sorry. Oh, it's my mask.
I have a couple questions.
Mr. Waka.
Hi, my name is Chris Waka. I'm a board member for Verona. A couple questions. The first is, when I looked over your proposal, it seems that a lot of your work is done or headquartered in, I guess, in California. Is there any concern about just the distance between where your company may be located and us being over here in Verona, New Jersey?
So we are currently working in 40 plus states at the moment, not quite at all 50. We have a staff of 43 people working all across the United States. So we have people up and down the East Coast. So technically our the place where the contracts get written and signed is Northern California, but the work takes place all across the United States and now even internationally.
Perfect. Thank you for that. The next question is, it seems that you're looking to give, suggestions that are not binding, but, going to be suggestions based on the research and the data that you collect. One of the stakeholder groups obviously is kids. Can you kind of walk me through your process for how you go about, I guess, interviewing kids or talking to kids or having discussions with kids? Is it voluntary? How do you guys go about that?
So thank you for that question. My background actually started working with children in the court system. And so decades ago, we don't need to explain how many of them, I spent a lot of time looking at how to ask questions of children without planting a suggestion as to the answer that we want to get. And I'll give you an example. In a classroom, as you know, the teacher might say, who was the 16th president? And perhaps Roma answered the question and didn't give the right answer. And I say, next, Tipisai, what do you have to say? And what a student learns is if I re-ask the question, you probably gave the wrong answer. And so they will try to give me a different answer. We don't want to make those suggestions. So we try, as we first have to identify what information we need to gather specifically from students. We want to make it an open and safe place where we can gather data, not just from students, also from families. And we want to make sure that the families are fully aware of the data that we're gathering, because this is a community effort. And so we look at the ways best to reach students from our youngest all the way up through high schoolers. And there is a different approach that's needed based on age and maturity and the appropriate pedagogy. We also often consult with the teachers who are working with those students as to the ways in which their students are most comfortable not only learning, but providing information. So we try to do some gathering to make sure that we are collecting information in ways that are appropriate and not in any way suggestive of information that, or the answer that we want to get, because we don't have any presumed answer. So we sometimes do that in small groups. We sometimes start off by modeling what question answer might look like amongst ourselves, and then the children understand that their answers are there's no right and wrong. So we use, deploy a variety of techniques to do that.
All right, I got two more questions. You may very well have the opportunity. I'm not saying you won't. That'll be the Dr. Ferneri's suggestion. I do appreciate the part of the proposal where it talks about, actively recruiting staff, because we're hurting in New Jersey. I'm sure all the 50 states are in, like, this teacher shortage is incredibly real. So the more we can get in Verona, that's something I'm very attracted to explore. There's one last part of your presentation. There was a quote that said, equity is not a zero-sum game. I just don't understand what that means. If you could kind of explain that.
I'm going to ask Tipisai.
Absolutely. So sometimes when folks hear about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the perception might be that some things or resources have to be taken away from one group to be reallocated to another group. And that's not the case, right? We are looking to build systems that allow for everyone within that system to thrive, and be able to really have an educational space where they're valued, and they're seen fully in their most and best authentic self. So when we're talking about zero-sum games, is that it's not about who wins the debate, who gets on top. We're not trying to rebuild hierarchies or put one group ahead of another group. It's not about that. It's really about creating a space where we know that every single child, regardless of background or identity, is able to thrive in this space.
Thank you for that answer. Sarah, you got some?
Hi, yes, Sarah Drappi, Verona Board of Education. I have a follow-up question to Chris's. So regarding the data collection for students, I'm assuming that is all voluntary, right? Based on policy, there should be an opt-out where parents do not have to allow their child to participate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. My second question is about the second to last slide. So your last slide was the questions slide, but the slide before that talked about evidence-based approaches. I guess that's regarding like suggestions that you'll make to the district. Can you outline some of those for us?
I'll tee it up and then Tippis may have more to add. So, we study, we read, we look at literature, we listen to speakers, and we try to really absorb what techniques have worked, what have we implemented that has worked. We're self-critical. We are in a continuous learning loop. Techniques that were cutting edge 20 years ago, many of them have been deemed less successful. They're no longer really sort of cutting edge anymore. So what we mean by evidence-based is that these are proven techniques, and sometimes we're not using we didn't get one book and we're going to do that, but where do we know that there are proven elements that we can help put into place to have the best chance of achieving the goals rather than just sort of making up concepts as we go. We really want to learn from the best. It's something that we do all the time and we pride ourselves on, so that we can translate that into practical steps that we're able to bring to any school that we work with. And Tippis, I don't know if you have something to add there.
Right. So evidence-based approach that I can recall that has been really successful to build inclusive classrooms is the building of norms. So that's an evidence-based approach. There's a lot of data and research that talks about having students be involved developmentally appropriately, obviously, in creating the norms of a classroom and having those norms be posted up in the classroom so that everybody knows that these are the expectations in this space. These are the things that we came up with together of how we're going to build this respectful community. And that creates a sense of buy-in from the students in the classroom, because it's not just directed by the teacher, but it's co-created with the students as well. So now they feel like they're a part of the process. So that's an evidence-based approach for inclusivity that a lot of data and research has been done around that has been successful.
Are there other questions from the board? Excuse me, we're having our meeting and then I'm going to open it up to public comment and give you an opportunity. So please do not yell from the audience. Thank you. Mrs. Prisco?
Yes, thanks, Mrs. Freshy. I don't really have a question for them, more or less a comment of my own personal from building systems for everyone to thrive, all the students in our community to thrive was something that was commented during the presentation. And unfortunately for myself, going off of some social media posts, I kind of feel that's just contradicting what I've seen before I came to the meeting. So I don't have any questions. That was just a comment that I had to mention. Thank you.
So there is a gentleman in the audience that wants a question. If you could come up to the podium and please just state your name, your address, and what your question is.
Like my address anonymous for them, if that's okay.
Well, it's a public
I'll
meeting
say I'm
and
from
that's,
Verona.
you could say you're from Verona and please give your full name.
Okay. All right, so my name is Derek Kupak. I reside in Verona, New Jersey. I have a question for Tibise. You posted on January 7th, 2021, Alicia Garza just called these Trump supporters vanilla ISIS. Laughing my fucking ass off. Please use this everywhere. What do you mean by vanilla ISIS? Sounds racist to me.
I'm not sure in what
I think that
context.
deserves an
it would
apology.
be.
I mean, I will say there are about 40 or 50 Tippecay Hernandezes on Facebook. I know that because.
Okay, there we go.
I'm trying to understand the question. Sorry.
What does vanilla ISIS mean in that statement? Are you denying it?
I think the question perhaps is, Tippecay, did you post that? Was that you or not you?
And then your followers are, well, you're teaching your followers to teach, to call Al Cracker. What does Al Cracker mean? This is your followers. This is what you're teaching.
I have no idea what Al-Cracker is, and I think that I would have to be able to look at that, and I don't have that in
Would you
front of
agree
me.
it's in the same avenue as vanilla ISIS?
Well, I'm having trouble even figuring out what vanilla ISIS is in terms of answering the question. So
Well,
You wrote it.
it looks like we're all not operating from the same position of information. So if there's certain tweets or posts, whatever,
You
that we
said,
could share with
please use
the whole
this
board, so we're
everywhere.
all in the same context here. 'Cause I
Yeah,
don't-
Mr. Walker, thank you for that suggestion. So if there are tweets or things that you see on social media, can you send them to the full board? And then we can go back and have a conversation and do a little bit more. Would you send it to the full board?
We did.
I did not receive any of it.
Well,
So,
So-
yes, and what I received did not contain any of the information that was just. I received that because I acknowledged it. However, what I'm hearing now is different from what I received. Okay, folks, if you have things you'd like to share with the board, Mrs. Fresky has already asked you to please send it to us. Include me as well.
yeah, they're live, yeah.
Right, but we have a question now just for Grand River, that's all, right? That's all we're worried about, not asking them questions, right? Now,
And
we
if
can ask the
you
board
have questions
later.
for Grand River, if you could share them with me, I will share them with them. Please understand that we're doing this presentation because we want to make sure that we don't go forward with anything until we're fully vetted. So this was something that we were doing in order to help us all understand what the point of I think the main point of this is putting somebody on the spot in this public forum was never our intention. You can,
You were, excuse me.
Pardon-
You
pardon
know what?
me.
If we don't have order, then we're going to adjourn the meeting and then we'll reconvene. Of course we are. No, you're not. Then let-
Ms. Freshy,
then
if I
put
could jump
yourself
in
on the
real quick,
ballot in
please.
November.
Well, essentially, here's what the deal is. We got a presentation tonight. We have different pieces of information that each of us may or may not have. But at the next board meeting, it's very likely we're going to vote yes or vote no to moving forward with this presentation. So I understand the reasons you may want to ask questions directly to this particular company, but the gatekeeper as to whether or not we end up hiring this company is this board needs 3 people to vote yes, and then we will, or 3 people vote no, then we won't.
Well,
So I can't make a vote until we get this information that you're referring to, because right now I don't have it.
Good point that we are not voting on this resolution tonight.
Correct.
If you can put together collectively what your concerns are, the tweets or social media postings, address it to the full board, and then we are going to go back and discuss.
rather than me ask the question, can you ask Tibisay right now if she said that?
I'm not asking any questions.
Oh.
I'm here to listen to a presentation, as we all are. That is what we got, a presentation.
Okay.
It is not being voted upon. There is no action on this evening. So clearly, you have concerns and you have questions.
Are they
So
valid?
Please send them Are your, everybody's questions and
Everybody's questions.
concerns
No,
are
no, I
valid.
just, I want to make sure that you think it's valid.
Everybody's questions and concerns
Is
are
my
valid.
question valid right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are going, we're kind of, you have a different question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
George Kozacek, 100 Morningside Road, Verona. I'd like to know if this is her post.
A little descriptor about why we cannot be racist. We can be prejudiced, but us
Mr.
not liking
Kozacek,
a white person does
Can you,
not put them
can you
in
just
peril
send
of
us
losing
that
their
with
job.
everything?
What do you mean? It's the
Not
public
put them in
YouTube video that she has on her site. I can play
So-
that.
Not put
Send
them
it
in
to
peril
us.
of
I don't
not
have to
losing
send
their
it to you.
job.
That's
It
his
hurts
job
the
to make
damn
sure he
people.
sends this information to you. And the other 4 people that you pay on this committee,
It
right?
hurts
That's the information you need.
This is
Now, I don't know
disgraceful.
why that this committee of 4 people and $20,000 you're paying
Can I
them
have a
did not
motion for a
find this
recess?
information that
Can I
we
have a motion
found
for a
readily
recess?
available
So
to
moved.
So we have a motion for a recess. Is there a second?
again.
Is there a second?
This is 45 lemons all over again. Come on, guys. Please, it was a simple, I Googled her name in seconds. I found videos and this and racism and her attitude and hating family. Don't listen to your family, she says. Don't listen to your family. Don't listen to your friends.
We're hearing your concerns, and again,
It's not a concern. It's
it
no
is a concern.
This person, this company does not belong at all. There is no like, let's vote on it, let's do whatever. This person here, if they have another person, all the welcome. The company needs to
So,
have a different person, not this
we
person.
hear
This person
you.
is not good for Verona. We teach our people, we teach our kids values here, not to hate people. We communicate, right? That's what we do here. We don't teach them the stuff that she posts. That's all. Look at what she posts. You can look. You don't need anybody to send you anything.
I do need you to send it to me. So that's
No,
what
you
we're
don't.
asking
You
for.
need to look yourself. Due diligence, once in a while, please. Okay?
You are welcome. Thank you. Do you have anything to add? All right, so I do want to thank our presenters, and we will take everything into consideration, and we are good. So thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to committee reports. And did finance meet?
Yes, I have a report. So our finance, we met last week and I printed up this whole report to give. And the first 2 items I had to talk about were kind of discussed already, but the third one, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'll wait for Mr. Cruz for his budget presentation. But last, if you give me 1 second, guys, at the last board meeting, we had a woman come up and she talked about her feelings about how there certain sports in Verona are paid to play. So I just want to thank the vision that Dr. Fernari and Mr. Cruz had in that there's a plan in place to make it so that within the next couple of budgets, so long as we don't see any kind of crazy curveballs from the state aid, that within a few years, the pay to play will be a thing of the past in Verona. So I was really, really excited that vision was aligned. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions on finance? Nope. And community resources, we met, correct? Mrs. Prisco, do you want to do community resources?
Sure. So let me just see, hold on a second. I didn't see it on our agenda, so I wasn't paying any attention. Superintendent search, we are in the final stages of hiring our superintendent going forward. With that, We had the presentation by the DEI consultants just now. And let me see where else. I did want to give, I wanted to thank the Verona Strong, to Kim Knockbauer and Kate Curran. They have spearheaded not only right around now, but prior to during COVID, they have done so much for the community. And I just want to give them a really big shout out for all their efforts and everything they have done for
Totally agree.
Verona. And I have my notes somewhere, but we have unfortunately 2 students that are ill, and they're doing a fundraiser with lawn signs. And those lawn signs, they've sold over 250 as of yesterday. And I believe they're going to do another order. But I just want to say thank you to them for all their hard work and dedication to Verona, and also to these 2 families and all their support. So thank you. And let me just see if there was anything. I don't think, was there anything else I missed, Dr. Fenari, on?
The other things, Dr. Fenari
Was-
reached out and met with Mr. Barrows,
Mhm.
correct? And that was in regard
Oh, yes,
to
my second page.
social media and some marketing. Dr. Fenari also met with Mrs. Carol Thomas. She's a former teacher for us in regard to the community garden. They're looking to possibly do an expansion on the community garden, and there's also talk about putting a mural back there on the side of one of the sheds or walls that's in that area. We also, Dr. Fenari also met with Mrs. Skinner representing VFI, just to keep that connection going. And I want to remind everybody, on May 24th, Dr. Moriello organized the Health and Wellness Fair, and that's going to be up here at the high school on May 24th. Oh, no, the Health and Wellness Fair. That's May 24th. Oh, May 14th. I'm sorry. Correct. May 14th. So February 24th, which is this Thursday, is virtual only, and that's the presentation by Mrs. Bruno. Correct. So there's a link for that on our website that you can find that, and it will be up on the YouTube station as well. And yeah, that is about it. So, and like Mrs. Prisco said, we're moving ahead with the superintendent search. So hopefully we'll have an announcement, within the next several weeks on that. That is it. Are there any questions in regard?
Yes, Ms. Fresky, Dr. Moriello, I think, had something else to add really quick.
So tomorrow evening, for my special education parents, for the 8th grade students that are moving up to 9th grade, I'm also doing a move up presentation in the library over here that will start tomorrow at 6:30. And that is only for special education parents of 8th grade students moving up to 9th grade. Feel free to please bring your students also, if you like to, also for the presentation. In addition, today, I received an email for Arlene O'Connell. For people who don't know who that is, that's the Essex County Coordinator from the Traumatic Loss Coalition. She shared an email with me in regards to a new film being released on February 25th. The name of the film is Butter. It's a PG-13, and it deals with youth suicide. To find this trailer, you can Google Butter's Final Meal. I share this information because it's important that communities are aware when films like this are released, as it can provide an opportunity for important conversations at home. Victoria Schwartz from the American Association of Suicidology was an advisor to the film, and states, while the plot synopsis appears concerning, the director and the producer worked very hard and with great care and sensitivity to make the film's content safe, engaging for young people, and highlight the problems of bullying, depression, and suicide risk, and further to emphasize the importance and the value of getting mental health care. I'm a father of 3 teenagers. I know that sometimes they do go to the movies, and maybe they go to different types of movies. So it is good to be aware that if you're sending your children off to the movies, that if this is playing and there are questions that come up at home, please know that we have our district resource page on our health and wellness page, and our counselors are always here to support our students if the need presents it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moriello. And at this point, we have public comment on agenda action items. So if there's anything on the resolutions that's being voted upon tonight and you want to make a comment on that, you can please come to the podium. And please just let us know what resolution that you're speaking towards for the action items.
I don't, Maria Scolanti, 6 Belclair Place. I don't have a resolution, but it could go to any of them.
This is specifically for what's being, for action items. If it's a general comment, you can do it at the end.
Mr. Moriello's presentation, for example, right? There's a resolution to show
No.
that movie.
No, that was just informative.
Throw me a
The
resolution,
resolutions are in the packet, the things that we're voting upon.
for example. Okay, the DEI presentation, for example?
No, anything that is an action item. So the packet that you picked up in the back, and it has all these resolutions, these are what we're voting on. So if you have a question or comment on what we're voting on,
Let's talk about the committee reports for the finance report.
so we're not voting on that.
Okay.
The
Sorry, on the
action
third
item.
page. Pages
So
aren't numbered.
Resolution number 1, resolution number 2, anything
Starts-
that's in the packet that,
If you go to page 3 and you see number 1 and it says resolved, that's where our resolutions start. And that's what we're about to vote on after we hear comments from the public.
Okay.
a
Tell
public
me
comment on
about
the end.
resolution number 6. You have student surveys, analysis, evaluations, examinations, testing or treatment. You see all that? In here, you have PNR 8465, bias crimes and bias related acts, revised for policy, new for regulation, administration of school surveys. What does that mean?
So those are mandatory policies. We work with Strauss Esme, and they supply policies that schools have to adhere to be in compliant with the law. You see the little M, that means it's mandatory. So these resolutions could be found in the packet. They're all online. You could read through them. So that's a mandatory.
Now, Maria, with that, is that specific resolution, what that one states is that if a survey comes from like the federal government, then we have to give it to our kids. But that also states that if the survey is not mandated by the federal government, then if you're going to either need parent permission or the school can't do it for certain things. So there's certain topics that are just going to be something where the school district's not allowed to survey kids on. So if you actually, I don't have the whole, the thing in front of me. But if you go on our website and you go into the policy and you Google it, you'll see that it kind of just streamlines what the school can survey kids about and what they can't. And this kind of limits the scope of what powers the school would have as to what they can survey kids about.
Just to mention to that point, it won't be on our website yet because we haven't approved it. Once we approved it, then the updated version will be uploaded. If you look at the packet from our last meeting, when it was a first reading, we outlined it in our Ed Committee report. I don't think we went into too much detail because it was a really, really long report, but it'll definitely be in that public packet if you go back and it's outlined. And I think Dr. Miller highlights
Yeah.
the changes that are done on there as well.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
if I could, Ms. Guante, like I put a summary in there, so like it tries to in a paragraph or less to describe like what Mr. Wacko was saying, Mr. Effie. Sometimes it's just changing a word or two. For example, sometimes it's changing pupil to student. Sometimes it's saying, one of them clarifies more that it's a state policy, another one's more of a federal policy. And it says it in the paragraphs. If you read those, if you still have questions, you can always email me and ask more. But it's there for you.
And the reason I'm concerned about the survey language, and I will go through that information, is because I was privy to a survey that was handed to a student in the high school where they were asked something about their preferred use of pronouns. And then the following question was their preferred use of pronouns that the teacher could use in front of a caregiver, implying that the student in the secret would have some sort of information that would not be shared with the parent. Um,
So
I-
Mrs. Squillanti, your 3 minutes are up.
Okay,
Yeah, you can
So-
always follow up and email me with any
Charlie
questions that
will-
deal with policies.
thank you.
Thanks.
Can you
Just
please
out of
can you-
curiosity.
yeah, Can you
Oh,
please
Derek
restate your?
Chupak, 7 Durrell Street, Verona, New Jersey. I wasn't necessarily scared. I didn't want to give them my information. They could probably watch and see it again. But as far as to piggyback off her resolution, you said it's mandated by the federal government. So what does that mean? If you guys don't implement these surveys, does that mean we won't get certain
No, Mr.
funding?
No, when we say mandatory, it's not the survey policy in particular that's mandatory. There are certain policies and regulations that are based in state of New Jersey law that's what the mandatory is. So what they're saying is that the practice that's outlined in that particular policy that says you can do these things, you can't do these things, that language is what's mandatory. Not necessarily that the survey is
So
mandatory.
you don't necessarily have to do the survey, and that's
Oh,
why
no,
you're,
there's
that's
no.
why you're voting on it.
Yeah. There's no survey in particular that this refers to.
Okay,
It's referring to surveys in general that touch on these topics.
okay. And what are those topics?
Let's see. Well, most of them have, basically there are surveys that have to do with what's in the title. So evaluations, examinations, testing, or treatment. So this particular policy has more to do with the kinds of survey type information that would be done in a setting where we're trying to.
Okay, I don't mean to cut you off.
That's
I only got 3 minutes.
That's good, all right.
I have a quick question
Yeah.
for you. So when we come up here, we can only talk about the resolutions. We can't address something we have a problem with.
That would come at
ever.
that
Yeah,
comes
so-
later.
And I think that's like a misunderstanding.
Mhm.
So there's two portions where public is welcome to the podium. And the first portion, which we're in now, is just comments on the things that we're going to vote on. And that's actually where the public has the most power and opportunity, because before we vote on something, when somebody comes to the podium and gives us new information or something we may have overlooked, or they have a question, we're not voting on that yet. So we have an opportunity when they say consent agenda at the beginning of the meeting. So if, this comes up, assume that we were going to vote on that vendor this evening, and you had brought a concern about social media. That gives us the opportunity to say, wow, we overlooked that. That's our miss. Can I please pull resolution number X to be voted upon separately or discussed further? And then when we do vote, that one that you brought the concern upon will be removed from the vote and give the board the opportunity to go back and get more information and look at it and put it on a future agenda. So this is the portion where the public actually has the most power.
Okay.
And then the second portion of public comment is where the public can bring up any topics that they wish that are pertinent to, the school district and education of our children.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you. So you waiting to comment on? Okay, so are there any other comments on action items? If Went out? Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's move on. And are there any new or old discussion items that anybody on the board wishes to bring up? Nope. Okay, so we are going to move on for the roll call of the resolutions. So I need a motion to accept resolutions number 1 through 15.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Prisco,
Second.
second by Mrs. Drappi. And is there any discussion on 1 through 15?
I have a question regarding resolution number 9. Dr. Moriello, are you able to just explain the vendor and like what this is for?
Adam Cross Consulting.
It's for assistive technology.
It's an evaluator that does assistive technology evaluations for special needs students.
Yeah, I want to thank the staff members on 10.2. I know sometimes there's a little trepidation about going into, people's homes to deliver instruction when a kid's ill during a pandemic. So thank you for their commitment to our kids.
Also, congrats to the staff members who are moving up in step. Takes a lot of work. Well done.
Any other comments? If not, Mr. Cruz, can you please do the roll call?
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Drappi? Thank you. Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Fresky?
Yes.
We have quorum.
And
Thank
for the record, we'll have Mr. Day is
Mrs. Day is
absent.
absent for the record, yes.
Right, excellent. And we do have addendum resolutions. I need a motion to accept addenda resolutions number 1 through 6.
So just say motion.
A motion
So moved.
moved by
Second.
Mr. Waka and second by Mrs. Drappi. And are there any discussions on 1 through 6? I just want to congratulate Mrs. O'Neill on her retirement. When I worked in the district, I worked with her up at Forest Avenue and got to know her there. So good luck on your next chapter. Are there any other discussion? If not, Mr. Cruz, can you please do the roll call?
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
For the record, Mr. Day is absent. Mrs. Drappi?
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Fresky?
Yes.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll do that. And then lastly, our public comments on any topic. And I do see somebody coming up. And just please state your name, your address, and it's a 3-minute limit. Thank you.
Hi, Rita Scelfo, 25 Church Street. I just wanted to take a second to thank Mr. Cruz, Dr. Benary, and the Finance Committee for including and thinking about pay-to-play sports. I think it's great in 2 ways. One, it allows all kids the opportunity to participate in sports, and also it lets all kids know that their sport's as valuable as somebody else's. And I think all kids should get opportunities outside of the classroom, and I really appreciate the forward thinking on this, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scopo.
Very much. And are there any other? Okay, so if not, we're going to close public comments.
This is where no one else has a comment, so make sure that they know they can comment now if they need to. All right.
So, oh. All right.
Everybody, Joe Haggerty, 44 Morningside Road. Thank you all. I just have a quick question. I mean, we could spend the whole night going back on Miss Hernandez's Facebook posts and all that, and I know you guys will now look at it. Thank God. But how do we get here? I mean, DEI. What's the goal? And we cannot get questions answered. Why are you not answering our questions? I don't understand. I was here a month ago. I asked you about 2 books. Nobody responded. Why? Why can't I know that? These are my kids in this school. Why am I not getting that information? I'm entitled to that. You work for us, am I right? So why am I not getting questions answered? And we heard it from parents the last time. It's very frustrating. And that's why you've got people yelling at you from the crowd, because they're frustrated with you. That's it.
Thank you.
Casey Beatis, 91A Lynn Drive, Verona. I wanted to address two different things. The first being you have very strong HIB anti-bullying for child to child. But what happens when a teacher is known for bullying and bullies your child? And it gets swept under the rug. It doesn't get addressed by a principal, and that teacher has tenure and continues to teach and has done it to other children. It is beyond despair. My child still suffers from that trauma, and it's terrible. The second is, in terms of your budget meeting, you are busing special ed children to Cedar Grove for a life skills classroom that you do not have here. That is unacceptable. If you are decreasing the number of children that you are sending out of district, you should at least be able to provide them a life skills classroom here.
But Dr. Moriello, what grades do we bus kids for that particular class?
So we have a shared plan with Cedar Grove where we do send our students over there. They're there for a full day. They're not, no, just a certain population. We have a shared program with them where we supply behavioral support in addition to paraprofessional support, and they attend Cedar Grove High School because Cedar Grove has a program that can meet the needs of those students there. So, and yes, we do transport them with our district busing. It's a shared agreement that we have. Help control costs.
Thank you, Dr.
Can
Moore.
I just make a comment about the HIB?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you will.
I just want to make one clarifying point regarding the comment about harassment, intimidation, and bullying. That law does pertain to adult to student harassment. So if in fact there is something that we need to have brought to my attention, I would ask that anyone who has that issue. Okay, well, I'm sitting here telling you now I don't know about it, and I would appreciate it if you would send me an email or give me a call, please.
Thank you, Dr. Fernari.
Hi, Jennifer Finnerty, 53 Montrose Avenue. I am here today to provide a comment on the state of special education in Verona. At the most recent IEP meeting for our son, we requested an in-class resource program as we believe that he requires modifications beyond the scope of paraprofessional certification and responsibility. For those here unfamiliar with this type of program, it is where a special education teacher pushes into the classroom to modify the general education content and provide specialized instruction for students like my son who have severe dyslexia. At this IEP meeting, we were denied this request and told that this program was not available in his current school. When challenged that this program is available at the middle school level, we were told that it is only available starting in middle school because we have to. This is unacceptable. As per NJ 6A14, the special education code, all students shall be considered placed for placement in general education class with supplementary aids and services, including curricular or instructional modifications, assistive technology, for which we were denied an evaluation earlier this year, teachers' aides, related services, integrated therapies, consultation services, and last, in-class resource programs. If it is in fact true that in-class resource programs are not available for elementary students in any elementary school, this option can never be considered for them, and therefore we are missing a very important required program. I understand we would only have programs for which there is a need based on individual students. It is hard to believe, it's just hard to believe. There are no children from the ages of 5 to 10 who require this as part of an IEP, and then suddenly an entire cohorts require this program in middle school. We are unbelievably appreciative of our son's teachers, case managers, and related service providers, and feel they are giving him everything they can. It was clear from our meeting the lack of options and mandated programs is a major issue, not only for my son, but I'm sure for many other learners in our community. I'm here tonight to ask that you, as the Superintendent and Board of Education, ask the hard questions of district administration to ensure that we are able to appropriately support all learners in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I don't see anybody else approaching the podium, so we are going to close public comment. The next public board meeting is March 8th, and confidential session is at 6 PM, followed by the public session at 7 PM. And I need a motion to adjourn.
And that board meeting, it'll be mask optional, correct?
I am assuming based on what comes out
Yes, very
tomorrow,
good.
so that will be mask
you.
optional.
So moved. Yes, for
Moved
motion.
by, moved by Mrs. Drappi. Second. Second by Mrs. Prisco. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? And that is it. We are adjourning the meeting. It is 8:18.